Hi, this is John Pettigrew, and you're listening to Talking Through My Hat, a podcast that explores bookish businesses, the fantastic people who create them, and what those people have learned. I'm a hat wearer, a recovering editor, and the creator of Futureproofs, enabling editors and authors to work better online. To find out more, visit wearefutureproofs.com or follow me on Twitter at John_Pettigrew. Welcome to this week's Talking Through My Hat. Today I'm talking with Jens Tröger, the founder of Bookalope. He's an experienced software engineer and computer science researcher by trade, with over 2 decades of industry experience including Microsoft Xbox, Intel Labs and Oracle Research. But he's also a book lover, a typophile and a book designer for print and e-publishing. Bookalope weds his 2 passions, computer science and book design, in a set of intelligent tools that automate analysis, cleanup and conversion to and from various formats. So, welcome to the podcast, Jens.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
I guess the best place to start is to ask how you describe Bookalope to people who don't know it.
I think it's a set of tools. And if you chain them together, they make up a fairly intelligent and largely automated book conversion workflow. And at some point, I decided to put a website in front of these tools. And over the years now, you can invoke these tools using the website as a user interface, a graphical user interface. There's a cloud API that you can use where you can invoke the tools individually through a REST API if you have your own workflow. And I use them offline myself. And so it's how you look at them, basically. But by and large, it's a bunch of tools that together make up a book conversion workflow. And you upload your book manuscript, can be a Word document, which is what people do most commonly. And it's usually edited, but it's also quite messy visually from a styling perspective. And so Bookalope then analyzes the styling, it analyzes the content, it extracts the styling from the document, and based on the visual styling of the document, it classifies the semantic structure of the document. So it tries to figure out what is a chapter title, what's a section title, this is a quotation, this looks a bit like a poem. And so it kind of assigns semantic meaning to the content. And once we have the content and the structure of the content, it actually throws away all of the visual styling.
Just keep the semantics and structure.
And internally, it's actually a pretty decent XML-only workflow. And so on the other side, when you then want to convert the book itself, styles are reapplied to that internal format. So if you want to download an EPUB or an ebook for your manuscript, you can select the styling for it, and then the styling is being applied, and the EPUB is being assembled, basically. And the same with print documents. So I know the structure, I know the content, so styling that structure consistently is fairly easy to do. And so you can download the PDF document for your manuscript. And if you're an InDesign person, then you can download the InDesign document, and it's already structured. It has all the HTML tags associated in case you want to do your ebook export. And so the tools, basically, Bookalope provides the tools to do all of the analysis and all of the tedious, nitty-gritty, painful work that we have to do when building books.
So it sounds like, as you say, it sounds like it kind of started off as a set of offline tools that you were using yourself.
Yes.
How did you end up then running a web business doing automation for people? I mean, how did you kind of get there? How did you set up a business, and why?
You're absolutely right. So I built the tools because I needed them. And at some point I was in between corporate jobs. And I wasn't too keen to go back and find my next job quite yet. And so I was sitting on these, set of tools that did something pretty useful. Well, I thought it's pretty useful. And so I decided to just give it a shot. I put the website in front of the tools, designed the UI of it for the website, and then launched the website and the tools and just try it out. So there wasn't actually ever an intent to make it a business. It just happened.
Okay. And when was that you actually launched that website and the business side of it?
The first beta was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that was just to see how people respond to it. And there was some interest. And then I just kept going.
That's got to be done. So it must be a bit different running a small business than working at someone like Oracle or Intel or Microsoft. And working in publishing is a bit different than working in IT. I mean, how are you finding it kind of 2-3 years in?
I wonder that myself every day, to be honest. It is very different, and it comes and goes. Like there are days when I'm really happy about what I do with all the work and all the risks of running my own business, and there are days when I do like the security of a paid job as well.
Yeah.
And so I don't think there is one is better than the other. Both have aspects of something that helps me forward in my life and that I enjoy versus what I enjoy less in a corporate job. It's just a different thing to do.
Yeah.
As for IT or computer science versus publishing,
yeah,
you're absolutely right. It's a struggle, and I think particularly for me, because I'm a bit of an outsider to the publishing industry.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I didn't have any contacts, right? And so nobody noticed the website until I went out actually to talk to people in person and say, look, I've got my laptop here. Why don't you take a look at this?
Yeah.
And then there was some interest. But other than that, I find it an uphill battle to kind of break into the publishing industry.
What's the big barrier? Is it a fear of the technology itself, or is it making the connections? I say it's a very connections-driven kind of industry in a sense, traditional in that way.
You know, I'm not too sure about it.
Yeah.
And I've been wondering about the technology quite a bit, because it seems to me whenever I talk with publishing houses, bigger or small publishing houses as well, they have a fairly established practice of building books, designing books, building books. And that makes a lot of sense, right? They've been doing this for hundreds of years. And so most of their practice is rooted in how we used to do things for the last 200-300 years. And it's very print driven. And then over the last decade or so, the technology has changed profoundly. And I noticed that the publishing industry seems to be very slow with embracing these changes. And so along comes Bookalope, where basically I have an AI front end, for example, right, to do the structured classification. It's an AI-assisted blob of software. But if I listen to media, then AI is this thing, this magic thing which takes all of our jobs, you know. And I think there's a lot of misperception as far as technology is concerned, and I think publishers are probably concerned about the changes as well, because it's hard to guess how these changes will impact their company, their workflows, and what's going to happen to, editors and book designers. And to that, I often respond that Bookalope, to me, I use it as a tool so that I can do a better job at what I enjoy doing, which is the editing part and the designing part. Like I don't want to spend 2 days noodling through paragraphs and tagging paragraphs so that some piece of software knows that this is a chapter. Right? That can be automated, and it should be automated. And AI is a good solution to automate that.
Yeah. Yes, I always have this theory that, you should let computers do what computers do well, which is routine, automation, anything that's clearly describable, and let people get down to what people do well, which is generally about meaning and appearance and usefuless and those kind of much more abstract things.
Being creative, right? I mean, as a type designer, book designer, like what I enjoy most about designing a book is the creative part, playing with the types, playing with the illustrations, and building the visual product. I just don't want to get sidetracked with tedious jobs that the software can do much better and faster.
I mean, it is the thing, isn't it? Of course, being a software developer, your natural inclination, I guess, is to, oh, well, here's a problem. Here's a thing I keep doing. I'll make the computer do that.
Yes.
It's not an approach that comes naturally to publishing people, because they don't know code generally. And we've had a couple of podcasts where we've got dug into that thing of, why on earth don't publishers learn to code? It would be so much better for us as an industry.
And that's an interesting point that you're making here, because I would argue they shouldn't learn how to code if the tools would be better.
Yeah.
Right? No publisher should be sitting down writing XML or HTML or CSS. They should be using tools that do that for them. Like, nobody writes PDF, right? Nobody writes PostScript, because at some point we decided it's too tedious and we wrote tools.
I'm not sure anyone ever wrote PostScript. It's horrific. No, I do actually remember hacking PostScript back in the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, it was horrible.
It is. And so why do we write HTML and XML, right?
Yeah.
I mean, why do we waste our time doing that if we could build tools that do that much better for us and be much more flexible about it, so that I can then be creative with the job.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want HTML.
You don't want to code the HTML, but there's definitely a utility for people in publishing to be able to code some Python or JavaScript or Ruby or something that's going to enable them to create that automation for themselves.
Right.
Rather than having to go to an external software person and try and describe the problem.
Yeah.
If you know the problem, it'd be great to have access to the tools.
Right. And that's why, for example, with Bookalope, there's a web API. And so if you want to use just this blob or this part of the tool or that part of the tool, then you can write your snippet of Python that talks to the API, right? And so that's how the website actually works internally. The website doesn't own the tools. It's just a bunch of JavaScript that talks to the tools and talks to the tools.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's kind of your ideal situation there, ideal workflow, where the publisher has some sort of asset management system, content pipeline, and then they just go, haha, I've reached this point. Now I should go and pull this function from Bookalope to tidy up the manuscript, and then now I've got some XML that I can move on, and then I'll do the next bit, and maybe I'll pipe that bit to Bookalope and get the result back from there. Is that kind of how you want it to work?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's how things usually work in computer science. And then I talk with publishers, and they describe their workflow to me, and I'm sitting there agape thinking, really?
Yeah.
That sounds horrific. Why are you doing this?
I think half the problem is that a lot of times publishers don't actually understand their own workflows. There's some institutional wisdom that means things happen the same way most of the time. But if people are asked to sit down and document it, they have great difficulty.
Yeah.
So something I was going to ask actually is, one interesting thing with this is that, by training and career and stuff, you're a software developer, you're a software guy, you've done research and computer science and stuff.
Yeah.
But what's driven Bookalope is something else, that you also do book design. How does a software developer end up doing enough book design that it's worth writing their own tools to simplify? I mean, how did you get into that side of things?
Because I wanted to.
So, fair enough. Yeah.
I do like writing software, and it's especially bigger like architecting software, not just writing code, but architecting bigger blobs of software.
Yeah.
Is actually a very creative and fun thing to do for me. I'm talking from my side. So at some point, a friend of mine asked me to help him building a few ebooks for books that he had written and self-published for print, but he needed the ebooks for them. And so after the third ebook, building the third ebook manually, I started writing little scripts, right?
Yeah.
And so over the years, things just evolved. It just happened. And sometimes, quite literally, there's a tiny little problem in the conversion process, for example, which could be fixed with 2 lines of hacking the XML. but I'm sometimes a bit stubborn, and then I can spend 2 weeks fixing that particular problem because I don't want to touch the XML, right?
Yeah.
And so
you'd rather solve the general problem than the specific case where it's gone wrong.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
very
and
much the
I just
engineer's approach. Yeah, yeah.
I just enjoy it.
Well, it's always one thing. It's great to enjoy what it is that you do, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And to be honest, one of the things that also motivated me and still does is when I go into a bookshop, it kind of rubs me the wrong way to look at books that are very obviously like a printed Word document, and it's just
Yeah.
not pretty. I mean, I'm same with ebooks. I sometimes I download an ebook and it just doesn't render correctly. It breaks, the images are broken,
Yeah.
they're empty page, all sorts of stuff happens, and that to me indicates that the tools that people use to build ebooks are still way behind where they should be. And to me, that's a motivation, right? Because I know that, if you had run that through Bookalope, that wouldn't happen.
Yeah. It is odd, isn't it? I mean, I read a lot of ebooks, and even newly published stuff that has presumably gone through some kind of modern workflow. Just sometimes you'd read it and you go, how has this come to be? It's ridiculous. As you say, missing stuff, missing section breaks, spelling mistakes. You think, how has this got through? It's bonkers.
Yeah, it is. And there was a few years ago, I went to the Book Expo in America, like in New York.
Yeah.
Book Expo America. And I talked with a publisher, and what he told me is that the way they build ebooks is there are separate workflows, and so the manuscript comes in, and because it takes such a long time for it to become an ebook, they're sending it off, and then the workflow branches. So editing happens on the printed copy, but not on the ebook. So you end up with ebooks that come back from some warehouse converter in India, which is based on an outdated version of the manuscript.
Yeah.
And that just shows how broken really the workflow is.
Yeah.
Well, there isn't really a workflow in the first place, right? But
it's very much an aside. It's not important. We can, if you publish a non-final version, that makes no sense. But as you've been doing Bookalope for, as you say, kind of 2-3 years. Has the business side kind of gone in the direction you expected? I mean, not in terms of pace. We all find our business goes more slowly than we would have hoped, I think. But has it gone in the direction you expected? Or have you found that, customers said, oh, well, here are these things. And you found yourself going in a kind of a different direction almost?
So it is going into a direction. Slowly, very slowly.
Okay. Yeah, publishers not necessarily quick to update their workflows.
No. I do get requests from people for features that puzzle me. For example, at some point, Bookalope was very strict with dropping the styling from the book manuscript so that a consistent styling can be reapplied on the other side.
It's that semantic versus visual thing. Semantics is what you want to keep, yeah.
Yeah. And yet people say, actually, we do not care about the semantic structure of the book. Like it's fine if this is one massive, big, flat, unstructured document, but we want to keep the styling, which was really
which is a fundamental misunderstanding of how styling works for a start.
Yes, and also like your ebook will never be accessible for vision impaired people, right? It won't have a lot of features that are based on the semantic understanding of a document, and they are just fine with it. And so I actually implemented this what you see is what you get conversion. So if you're uploading a really crummy Word document, your ebook will be flat. It will validate, like it will from an EPUB standard
technically valid.
It's technically valid, but it's really ugly.
Yeah.
And people are just fine with that. And that really puzzled me. So that was a direction that I struggled with. I kicked and screamed before I implemented that.
Sometimes you do wonder about that old saying, the customer is always right, but sometimes they're wrong.
They are, yes.
Oh, dear me.
Yeah, yes. And I had plenty of heated conversations with customers
Yeah.
about that.
So, I mean, I guess that kind of takes us on to this thing of, you're running a business, you're having to deal with customers, which is
Mhm.
quite different from building tools for yourself. How do you go about that business side, that learning to run a business, to do it better, to do it at all? I mean, it's very different from having a job. How did you go about that whole thing?
To be honest, I'm really bad at the business side of things, the marketing side and
Hmm.
all of that. And I do a bare minimum that I think I need to do to keep Bookalope moving forward.
Hmm.
My day job at the moment is also in a second startup with friends, and
Hmm.
so my business partners in that startup, they are doing the business side of things,
Okay.
and it helps me to learn what I should be doing for
Yeah.
Bookalope because I watch
You
what they are doing,
you can
and I
observe
look.
them.
Hmm?
You can observe what they're doing and think, haha,
Yes.
that's a good idea.
Yes, yes, and I also, and that's a little bit intimidating to me, as I see the amount of effort that goes into running that business and
Hmm.
bringing it off the ground, and it's like two or three people's full-time job
Mm.
to do just the outreach, the marketing, the financial side of things.
Yeah.
And so I look at that and it horrifies me even to think about not writing the software for Bookalope and instead having to do all of that.
Yeah.
And constantly torn between, grumbling and doing the business thing versus being excited about implementing some new feature or,
Yeah.
oh, there's a, and I can fix that. And it's really interesting and challenging. So it's to me personally, it's a constant struggle.
Yeah. I mean, as a technical person, there's always this split, isn't
Mm.
there, between building the product and building the business. And for a lot of us, the attraction is the product. That's what you're there for, in a sense.
Yes, that's how it started.
So as you think about, your business, you're 3 years into Bookalope as a business. Obviously, the tools have been around for longer than that. But if you think about, the next 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, do you think that far ahead at all? Are you able to think, if I want the business to be around then, where do I want to be? I mean, what sort of stuff are you thinking about?
So at the moment, I look at Bookalope at the technology side of things, and I look at it as fairly sound and stable.
Hmm.
There's always a new feature that comes in and a new challenge,
Yeah.
and so from that aspect, it will always move forward.
Hmm.
And because I'm having fun with it, and there's no question in my mind that I will keep doing this.
Hmm.
Looking at it from a business perspective, I shifted the focus a little bit more towards business engagement and outreach because I can now afford to kind of do that
Hmm.
because the technology is sound.
Yeah.
So now I have something that I can talk about rather than an idea that I'm trying to sell.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing that for the last about 6 to 12 months, and it starts to kind of raise interest, which is really interesting to me. And so, looking forward, I want to cultivate these connections more, and I want to do more of that outreach and kind of get people to be more curious and engaged with what Bookalope actually provides and what it could
Yeah.
provide to people who run their own publishing
Yeah.
conversion workflows.
I mean, encouraging curiosity is such an important thing, isn't it? Because it's very
Yeah.
easy when you're in a corporate job to be kind of just very focused down on the next thing that you've got to do to
Mm-hmm.
get your paycheck and this kind of stuff.
Right.
And it's not just about
Yes.
your own tools either, is it? Encouraging it's an educating the customer thing almost. It's a case of, look, your life would be better if you just looked up from the trenches, and it's so hard to do when you're in that situation.
Oh, it's especially for me, it's really hard because I'm as I said, right, I'm not really good at selling myself and selling my product and kind of,
Yeah.
you know, doing that kind of job. And so going out at a conference, for example, and with a little sign and saying, oh, come talk to me about Bookalope kind of thing. It's really tricky. It challenges me personally. And it's fun to do, but it's challenging. And I do meet a lot of interesting and fun people. And some are very open to trying out something new. Some aren't at all interested, because they have a solution that works for them. No matter how poorly that solution works, it works for them.
Yes.
And that's good enough for them.
Yeah. Is that what you find hardest about running a business? That kind of the sales and marketing promotion side, or is it the admin, or what? I mean, what is it that is the hardest thing for you about the business?
The business thing is the hardest thing about the business.
Okay. Care to break that down in any way?
Okay. So if I look at the business as large from a sales and marketing perspective, the financial, the taxation side of things, the organizational side of things, I find the organizational side easiest. Like when I was still at corporate, I had my own team. I was leading teams, and I had people work for me, and I had that kind of organizational effort already. So that was the easiest to manage. And it actually is a lot of fun, because most of that evolves around the technology. I wouldn't manage people who do the marketing and sales. So, and that's the other thing. Like I at the moment, I'm at a point where I'm thinking to hire, for example, a marketing person, and tell them, this is what Bookalope does, and do what you do best, and go out and do the marketing thing, because I'm really poor at it. And so it's similar with the financial side of things, especially because Bookalope is a website, which means there's international customers, and then there are challenges with like the European data protection laws, that is tricky to work with. And so learning about these things is always something new to me. It's challenging, but if I would have to pick on a scale, I think business, the managerial side of things, is probably easiest. It's what I'm most comfortable with. Yeah. But the taxation and marketing side of things, I find more challenging. But the taxation more so than marketing.
Yeah, it's that. Particularly, as you say, once you have, as a web business, it's kind of, you'd have to actively turn away international customers because they can find you. But it does bring, oh my goodness, how do I deal with the USA or Europe or India or whatever? Because it's all these unique situations with taxes.
You're right, and I do that, bit by bit, and really depending on the person, and I think in that aspect, it helps that Bookalope is still in the growing phase, because otherwise, if I had dozens and dozens of requests every day from people all over the world, I wouldn't be able to manage.
Yeah. So, I mean, as you look back on the last 2 or 3 years, what have you learned about yourself from running a business? As we said, it's very different from a corporate job, a job where you get a paycheck. How has that affected your view of who you are?
It certainly has changed my lifestyle in a sense that a reliable paycheck is easier to live with. There's a lot of new things that I had to learn about, not just the marketing and the financial aspect, but also dealing with the frustrations of growing a business. Yeah. One thing I find really difficult to decide, for example, is when do you decide to pull the plug? Yes. When do you declare efforts as failed versus I'll give it another 6 months?
There's the balance there, between determination and passion, and pig-headedness.
Yes,
and finding that's the right place there. Yeah, it is hard, particularly in those early stages when it can take so long for publishers to move from, that looks kind of interesting, to, yes, here's some money.
Yes, it takes very long. And there are times when it's quite frustrating to keep going. But then I just enjoy it too much, and that's one of the things I noticed, that I probably am pretty stubborn, maybe in a self-destructive way almost, that keep going no matter what. But I'm having fun, and it's nice to do something that I enjoy.
Yeah.
And at this point, I can still afford to keep going, and it noodles along. Things are rolling well enough so that I can keep doing what I really enjoy. And having that experience, I think, was really important to me. Just that sense of liberation for a while from a corporate environment to just, this is my thing, and I can do whatever I deem is right.
Is that what keeps you coming back to it every day? Is that sense of, this is mine and I can build what I like?
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Well, that's been a great conversation. Thanks very much for your time, Jens.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
This was Talking Through My Hat, a podcast by John Pettigrew, founder of We Are Futureproofs. Please let me know your thoughts by leaving a review at Apple Podcasts or by commenting on the website, myhat.wearefutureproofs.com. You can subscribe to this channel at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Our theme music is from hooksounds.com.